Chapter 27 War for the English Throne. The Wars of the Roses. The French weren't the only people to fight with each other over who should be king. England had its own civil war over the throne. Cousins from one side of the royal family, called Lancastrians, fought against cousins from the other side of the family, called Yorks. The Yorks had a white rose on their banners, and the Lancastrians had a red rose on theirs, so today we call these wars over the English throne the Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses began during the reign of Henry VI, the baby son of Henry V. When Henry VI grew up, he began ruling England for himself. He was a very good man. He spent hours and hours in prayer. He refused to have his enemies put to death, and once he even left a dance given in his honor because he thought that the dresses worn by the young ladies weren't decent enough. But Henry VI preferred reading and praying to ruling. Once he was reading in his room when his dukes came to ask him about a problem in his country. King Henry VI sighed and said to the priest who was with him, "They do so interrupt me by day and night. I can hardly find a moment to read holy teachings without disturbance." After he had been king for years and years, Henry VI had a fit of madness. Suddenly he stopped speaking to anyone. He sat in one place, staring in front of him, for hours. He didn't seem to hear his friends when they spoke to him, even when they told him that his wife had just given birth to a son. Henry VI's madness was probably inherited. His grandfather, the King of France, had struggled with fits of insanity all his life. He even believed that he was made of glass, and that he would break if he fell over. Now this madness had passed down to the English royal family. England needed someone to run the country until Henry VI recovered. So Henry's family asked Henry's distant cousin, the Duke of York, to become protector, or substitute king. The Duke of York agreed, but when Henry VI began to get better, the York family didn't want to give up the throne. Henry and his queen had to gather an army and march against the Duke of York's army. After a huge battle, the York supporters were defeated, and the Duke himself was killed. The queen ordered his head put up on the city walls with a paper crown on it. Now Henry VI could rule again, but the York attempt to get the throne wasn't over. The Duke of York's son, Edward, raised another army and attacked the royal forces again, and this time the Yorks were victorious. They put Henry VI in jail. In 1461, Edward took over the throne, proclaiming himself to be Edward IV, the rightful king of England. Edward was a handsome youth of 19, 6 feet tall, a good dancer, and a good fighter. He was also a capable king. He learned the names of every important man in his kingdom, so that he could greet everyone like a friend. But Edward fell in love with a woman his family didn't like. Elizabeth Woodville was older than he was, and she had been married before to a knight who died fighting on Henry VI's side. Edward knew that his mother and his advisers would never approve of Elizabeth, so he married her in secret. Months later, when his advisers tried to arrange a marriage between Edward and a foreign princess, Edward had to admit that he was already married. He ordered London decorated with colored paper and tinfoil, and brought Elizabeth Woodville into the city in a great parade. He also gave her 5 brothers important jobs in the government. Many of the English nobles didn't like that. They thought the Woodvilles were gaining too much power, so several of the nobles joined together with Henry VI's supporters and let Henry VI out of jail. They marched towards Edward's palace in the middle of the night to arrest him, but he heard they were coming, jumped out of bed, and fled from the country. Now Henry VI was king again, but not for long. Edward was busy raising another army. He marched back into England and took Henry VI prisoner. "My good cousin," Henry VI said, when he was taken captive, "I know that in your hands my life will not be in danger." But he was wrong. While he was in prison, someone killed him. We don't know who the murderer was, but Edward probably gave the order for Henry VI's death. Now that his rival was gone, Edward IV was able to reign for 12 uninterrupted years. When he died in 1483, his 12-year-old son became king in his place. But this young king, Edward V, was too little to rule all alone, so his uncle Richard, Edward IV's brother, offered to help. That was the end of the 12-year-old king's reign. Richard took over the throne and announced that he was now King Richard III of England. Young Edward V and his little brother mysteriously disappeared. The people of England murmured about Richard's cruelty. They whispered that he had ordered his brother's 2 sons murdered so that he could take the throne. They told stories about his wickedness. According to one story, Richard was born with a full set of teeth and ate alive frogs for fun. According to another, he had a withered arm because Elizabeth Woodville, the young king's mother, had put a curse on him. Richard may have gotten his crown by wickedness, but he didn't keep it for long. 2 years after he became king, another royal cousin, Henry Tudor, gathered yet another army and challenged Richard's claim to the throne. In 1485, Richard marched his own soldiers out to meet Henry at a battleground called Bosworth Field. Richard should have won the Battle of Bosworth Field, because his army was twice as large as Henry's, but his soldiers didn't fight very hard. As a matter of fact, only a few hundred men were killed in the battle. The rest surrendered. When Richard's advisors saw that Henry was winning, they told Richard to run, but Richard refused. "I will not budge a foot," he yelled. "I will die King of England." And he did. He was killed in the battle, and the royal plume on his helmet was lopped off and given to Henry Tudor. Henry put it on and announced that he was now the new King of England. The Wars of the Roses were finally over.